This is Python's Paradise. I am your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena. And folks, the Bad News Bears is celebrating its 45th anniversary. And of course, I would have been 4 years old the year that came out. So, which you know where I'm headed for my age. But folks, I have Rudy Stein himself on the show with me today for his second time. Last time was 2017, and here we are. That was February 2017. Here we are, March 14th, 2021. I have the wonderfully talented David Pollock. How do you do, David?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on. Happy Pi Day.
Yeah. Why is it Pi Day?
It's 3.14, March 14th.
Oh, I learned something today.
That's kind of an obscure fact.
Okay. Well, what's it like where you're at? We're right now, in terms of COVID, here in New Brunswick, Canada. We're in the yellow phase, which is we got these color levels. The gray is locked down, then there's red, then there's orange, then yellow, then green is your home stretch. We're in yellow right now, so we've handled this quite well. How are you folks in California doing with that?
Well, we have a similar color code system. Ours is the severest is purple, and we're just getting out of that down to the next lowest, which is red. So LA area is going to go red starting tomorrow, I believe. And that means that we'll allow some limited indoor activities, like restaurants can have 25% capacity indoors, although they've been allowed to have outdoor dining for quite a while.
So does that
Um,
mean you'll need to have the Bears over?
yeah, it's always been tough to get the Bears together. Last time we had a reunion was our 40th anniversary, and I managed to get 5 of us together, and that's tough to do.
Yeah, I've had Gary Cavanero on. Who else is available from that movie?
I know that Aaron Blunt is usually open to doing interviews.
Okay.
Let's see, who else have we had? Haven't gotten David Stambaugh to do one in a while, or I think Brett Marks occasionally will come out.
Okay.
Scott Firestone was at our 40th as well. So
Yeah. Well, it's hard to believe 45 years that movie. You haven't aged a bit.
oh, thanks. Yeah,
Hey.
I've aged a lot. I like to point back to the movie just to show you, hey, look, I had hair.
I thought that was part of the hat.
No, actually, it was hard to fit in the hat. I had an abundance of hair back then.
Yeah. Well, I can't believe it. Like I can remember a little bit from the 70s, not a lot, but I can remember a little bit. And 1976, of course, was the year my younger brother was born. He was my tech guy for this. And of course, the year that Bad News Bears come out. And I still, to this day, consider the Bad News Bears. I can't see it being equal the best of the sports movies, or at least the best of the baseball movies.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, well, there's
Yeah.
a lot of competition out there for that too, but it's certainly the best kids sports movies in a long time, and there have been a lot of Me Too kind of movies that have followed. But yeah, it seems to stand up to the test of time. It's hard to believe we're here 45 years later, even talking about it.
Yeah. Tell me, what kind of things do people bring you when you do conventions? You had anything really interesting, anything unique you've ever been asked to sign?
No, it's usually the typical stuff, bats and balls and hats and shirts and pictures.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I don't know that anybody has been able to do that. I somebody did show up with a ball that he said was signed during the original shooting. I said, no, I don't remember signing any baseballs back then. But I looked at it, and sure enough, that was my signature. I have a unique way I sign when I'm doing autographs. So I said,
Wow.
oh, man, I didn't remember that, but sure enough, that's authentic.
Wow. Was there any other names on it?
Oh yeah, I think it had most of the cast members, in fact.
Even Mathoff?
I don't know if it had Walter, but it had Tatum, I believe, and
Oh, wow.
Jackie, and yeah, was, and that was a great opportunity to, when we were filming there, because we were at that baseball field for 10 weeks,
Hmm.
and most of the time just sitting around waiting for the next scene. So, there were some entrepreneurial people that apparently were having us sign things anticipating the future of this. But even we had no sense back then that this was going to be anything but a fun kids movie for the summer. We had no idea that it would take off like it did.
Well, you know what? One of the things I really enjoyed about the Bad News Bears, and I won't give away the ending for anybody that hasn't seen it, although people should have by now, but nonetheless, I loved how it ended, and I loved that it ended in a way that you couldn't really predict it being that way, but it gave a satisfying ending, I kinda like that.
And it's funny that the producers of the show were worried about that ending, and
Mhm.
we actually shot an alternate ending in case, when they screen tested it, if the audiences didn't receive it well, that we would change it up a little bit so it had an alternate ending. Fortunately, we didn't have to use that, but it's in Paramount's vault library somewhere.
Is it on the Blu-ray or anything as an alternate ending?
No, no, and I've tried. For a while, Warner Brothers had the rights to Paramount's video vault,
Mhm.
and I made a presentation to them to do a Blu-ray edition in high definition with a bunch of extras that we would add into it, and they considered it, but that we were just at the verge of going from Blu-ray to streaming, and they were struggling to make box sets even pencil. You can remember, back in the days, they were selling box sets of anniversary editions of movies with all sorts of extras and features and things like that, and you'd find them at Costco or Best Buy and other stores. But you don't find that so much anymore because it's so convenient to stream things. Everything's going that direction.
I still do get physical media, but a lot of times, it's a matter of finding it. Sometimes you have to order it online, but yeah, I'm one of these people that still likes to own the movies.
Yep, I'm the same way. Yeah, I
Yeah.
have my great box set of Gone with the Wind, and a few of my favorites like that. But it's less and less do I actually go to the physical media, because I've got so much now in my online library.
Hmm.
I prefer to just stream it. It's so much more convenient.
Speaking of Gone with the Wind, I think this whole cancel culture thing is the dumbest thing I'm hearing right now. Now they're trying to cancel Pepe Le Pew, and I'm like, my goodness.
Well, I think, to the frustration of people that do that, it often does the opposite of what they intend by calling more attention to it. So
It's funny over the Pepe Le Pew thing because somebody had put a post on Facebook saying that his dog just got sprayed by a skunk. And one of the people responded by putting the meme of Pepe Le Pew jumping up and down. And went and just watched a Pepe Le Pew video, and then the following day or so, it was like he's like the major criminal now. This poor lovesick skunk.
yeah,
Uh,
I get
yeah.
where people are coming from. Misogyny is a real problem, but you have to look at things like that in the context of the times.
Yep, yep. Well, they came out against Greece not too long ago, and I'm like, do they not realize the story's set in the 50s? Because they're complaining because there wasn't enough diversity, and they talked about no gay lifestyles, and I'm like, it's set in the 50s. Context,
Yeah.
you know. I get so frustrated hearing them and it's like they're just looking for something to complain about.
Well, there's plenty of things to complain about,
Mhm.
but take a deep breath and keep it in context and use this as a teaching moment. If it's something to contrast from what our sensibilities are today, saying that was then, this is now. It's not appropriate or normal anymore.
Exactly, exactly. Well, they so far they knock on wood left Bad News Bears alone, although I don't know what they could attack for it, but knowing
Oh,
them,
well, but we were attacked at the time for the language that we used in the movie. In fact, when we were filming, we scenes that had offensive language, we actually did film PG versions for when it would eventually, go on to television. But no, no, we had a lot of parents that were just outraged that we would portray children behaving like that, especially with the ethnic slurs and the foul language. But that was based, that was the way kids really behaved back then. And
hmm
the writers of the show had the wherewithal to actually present it the way it was. So, in a way, maybe it was good that it upset parents, and so that they could recognize that that was something that needed to be dealt with at a parental level.
do you remember the premiere for it way back then?
I remember that less than, because I think we did something at the Paramount lot, and they didn't make a big hoopla about it. But once they realized what a big deal it was, they sent us on a nationwide publicity tour. So
hmm
they flew all of us to New York City, and we played softball in Central Park with the original Broadway cast of Annie. They had
hmm
Mayor Koch there to throw out the first ball, and it was a big deal. We signed autographs in Macy's, and then we kind of scattered across the country. I went on the group that went to Kansas City, and where else we go? San Diego. Tasty Freeze had come out with a special Bad News Bears Sunday. Yeah. So that was heady stuff back then, and it's probably a once in a lifetime kind of a thing, because most actors will go their entire careers and not have been in something as iconic or as memorable as that was. So I was very fortunate.
Were you surprised when it became a hit?
Yeah, I was surprised how much of a hit it became, because I thought it was a pretty solid script. I remember reading it straight through the first time I got it. I thought, this is a really good movie. But I don't think that any of us took it too seriously, because most movies um, open, they get some hoopla, and then they fade away. So what's been interesting is the icon status that it's achieved, and it's become part of the culture of our generation.
Yeah, it was in the. I know it was in the top 10, maybe even the top 5 grossing films that year too. Top 10 at least.
Yeah, no, it was amazing, and it certainly made a lot more money than they spent on it, which is
hmm
why we were very quickly under contract to make more, and we made the two sequels to the original Bad News Bears. And in
hmm
fact, we were contracted to make 1 to 3 more of them. They had already started writing a script for the Bad News Bears Go to Cuba, which would have been fun.
What was it like doing the sequels in comparison to the original film? Was it the same kind of experience, or do you look at them fondly or indifferent?
No, well, the second one, Breaking Training,
hmm
I think we still had some of the magic was still there.
hmm
Um, we had Bill Devane was replaced Walter Matthau as the coach, and Bill was great at working with the kids, and we really had a rapport with him that I think really showed up on the screen. And they were
hmm
able to keep most of us together, of the original cast together. So some of it transferred over to the second movie. It wasn't quite as good as the first movie. There's no totally replacing Walter Matthau or Tatum O'Neal, but it did carry on enough that they filmed the third movie, Bad News Bears in Japan. And unfortunately, by that point, it was pretty much lost. We were filming, and we spent a month filming in Japan. And not only was the magic lost, but there was some, what's a good word to use for it? There were some hurt feelings and anxiety that went along with it that really didn't help very much.
Do you have what were your memories of being in Japan at that time?
Well, I was amazed. That was my first time traveling overseas anywhere,
Hmm.
and I was all of 16 years old, so it was quite an adventure for me. Unfortunately, we only had Sundays off when we're filming on location, so that was our day to go and explore, and that was interesting. Going, this is back in 1977. We were filming over there, so
Hmm.
Japan was completely different than anything I experienced, and it was a complete sensory change. I mean, everything looked different, felt different, smelled different, sounded different, and the culture was totally different.
Have you been back there since?
Only briefly. I've needed to go to Hong Kong a couple of times. I spent the night over there on the way to Hong Kong one time, but no, I haven't spent any time in Tokyo. I'd love to do that though.
Yeah, I've never been there before, so it's interesting, and you were back there. You were there when I was just what, 5 or 6 years old. But yeah, when I had interviewed you last, I had not done any traveling, and I'm gonna be 49 this year. But one of my guests had invited me to a fan convention in Toronto, and I couldn't turn that down because I was asked to assist her. And the convention scene is wonderful. I gotta say, I got the bug on that, and I've been back to Toronto every year except last year. But we'll get into that. But yeah, but yeah, that was back in the day, the '70s, and of course, Walter Matthau, I gotta say, in my opinion, was a little underrated as an actor because a lot of people they saw him as a comedian. I'm gonna tell you, I watched The 7 Year Itch with Marilyn Monroe, and there was an edition they had on there on the disc of Walter Matthau trying out for the Tom Neal role. I could not look at the film with Tom Neal the same again because no offense to Tom, but I found he was way over the top in his performance, very exaggerated in his movements, his facial reactions. I watched Walter Matthau, and I don't know whether it was the studio wouldn't let them have him or whatever. I watched Matthau do the same thing on a clip, and it was so natural. The humor came natural. And I was like, why weren't we given Matthau in Marilyn Monroe? Because now it's hard to watch the movie when we could have had that magic. And Matthau wasn't over the top. It was just very natural because this was a role where the guy's talking to the audience.
Right.
But Matthau made it look so natural. It's like he didn't even know the camera was there. And I always remembered that. And Mathoff and Jack Lemmon have done a number of movies together, and they were wonderful. I know I asked this before of you in the last interview, but you know, let's go into Mathoff and any memories you have to share of him on the set of that movie. Have you seen him even before his passing?
I did see him once before he passed. We both happened to be eating at the same restaurant. And I went over and he was very gracious. Must have been 10 years after the movie, so it was good to see him. I did have an exchange with him after he had his open heart surgery. I sent him a get well note, and he sent me back a thank you card from the bottom of his new heart.
Mhm.
And another memory I have of Walter is he invited Jack Lemmon to come to the set one day and
Mhm.
watch this film, and introduced Jack to all of us, and we all went over to Baskin Robbins and had ice cream together, and that was really fun, and that's the kind of rapport that Walter had with the kids, and that's why with the magic worked so well, because we genuinely liked him, we looked up
Mhm.
to him, and we felt comfortable around him. I,
Mhm.
I remember one scene that I filmed with him is when he asked me to go in to get hit by the ball a second time. And when we first got together as a cast, that was the scene that all the other kids remember too, because Walter couldn't get through the scene because every time I'd look up at him with my big brown eyes and start stuttering that I didn't want to do it again, he would burst out laughing. We must have filmed that 20 times until we could do it straight. But that was the ultimate compliment to me, that here is probably one of the greatest comedic actors of all time. He thinks I'm funny.
That is a compliment.
It
Yeah.
is. And he gave me some advice one time. He said, David, here's some acting advice. Whatever you do, don't put whipped cream on top of the whipped cream. And that was his philosophy, was you don't overdo it. You need to kind of play it straight, because as you mentioned, if it comes off natural, it's all that much more funny.
Yeah. And it definitely worked for him. And of course, he and Lemon made a lot of magic together, start with The Odd Couple. And of course, Tatum O'Neal, a very iconic child star at that time. Um, have you seen her since the movie?
No, I haven't. I haven't actually. I think I've seen almost all the other cast members since then, but I haven't seen Tatum. It's kind of hard. She's been, living in New York for most of the time, so she's not
Hmm.
really around. But that's okay. I mean, Tatum, even when we were filming, she was kind of on a class of her own. She'd already won an Oscar, and she didn't spend a lot of time with the full group of kids.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I had forgot she won the Oscar before that.
Yeah.
You had two Oscar winners on that movie because Mathoff won for the fortune cookie.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that must have been interesting.
Yeah, it was. Well, fortunately, being teenagers, we really didn't know that much about
No.
how impressive they were. So I think it would have been different if we were overly impressed with the people we were working with. We could just kind of relate with them on a kid level, and that's what made it work.
And of course, Vic Morrow was in this. I so sad the tragedy that took his life. But of course, he was in the Bad News Bears, and again another great talent on board that movie. I think director Michael Ritchie was very fortunate that not only did he get the child cast that he got that worked naturally, but he got some seasoned professionals as well.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely did. I mean, some of us were professional actors. I was well into my career at that point.
Hmm.
Some of the kids, they did a nationwide casting call, and this was the first movie for most of the kids that were in there.
Hmm. So how in touch are you with the other bears? Like, is it
Um,
regular?
yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, occasionally I'll go to shows with Gary Cavaniero and Aaron Blunt. I'm still in touch with many of the others, including Alfred Lutter, Jackie Earl Haley, Brandon Cruz, who played the opposite pitch, the pitcher of the Yankees on the team,
Hmm.
which is another story too. This was after the courtship of Eddie's father, and because of that, Brandon had his Bill Bixby, his on-screen dad from that series, come and visit us when we were doing rehearsals, which was awesome because I watched that show, so it was fantastic to meet Bill Bixby. In fact, that was the last conversation I had with Brandon, because he's trying to raise $50,000 to put a Hollywood Boulevard star together for Bill Bixby, which I've been trying to help him with. And so if anybody's interested in helping us make that happen, go to, he has a GoFundMe account going to try and make that happen.
Oh yes, absolutely. What is the GoFundMe? Is there a specific link or anything for that?
No, but if you go on there and you search for Bill Bixby, it'll
Okay.
pop right up.
All right. That's great. So what is it like when you guys do get together at these conventions? Do you just pick up where you left off, or Uh, is it like, you were never apart, or what's
Yeah,
that
no,
like?
the rapport keeps going on. I mean, we're all united by our fond memories of that part of our childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, and we're all connected with something that was kind of special and part of our generation's culture. So yeah, we love that, and we still get along famously. We don't get together that often, but when we do, it's really nice.
Well, hopefully, when COVID takes a long-awaited hike, um, things can open up, because I'm looking forward to getting back to the conventions. I miss it terribly. And yeah, I've done 3 Horror-ramas and 1 Comic Con, and I'm looking forward to getting back into it again. And like here right now, our theaters are back open. Like, I've been going back to the movies since last July, and it doesn't bother me at all. But our theaters are open, but I can't get back into the station where there'd be less people. I can't make any sense of that.
No, the response to COVID-19 has been all over the place. I mean,
Hmm.
it's nobody's ever dealt with something like this before. Nobody in living anyway.
Have you encountered any or know anybody that's had it?
Oh, sure. No, I've known a number of people that have had it, and fortunately, all of them fully recovered.
Thanks
Um, but
goodness.
there's so many that did perish because their immune system just couldn't handle it.
Yeah. Do you get out often, or do you just mainly just stick at the house?
Well, ironically, my main business has been consulting for the past 10 years or so, and
Hmm.
I've been working mostly out of my home office until last July, when I took on an assignment that has me going into a regular office pretty much daily. And that office, practices safe, um, health practices to make sure that nobody gets sick, and we haven't had any outbreaks at the office. But um,
Baseball consulting?
no, no, no. This is business consulting.
I'm pulling your leg.
Yeah, no, baseball I was never good at.
That's why you get hit with the ball.
Exactly.
Michael Ritchie's no longer with us either, and just any memories you want to touch upon with him? Any special moments on the set?
No, I mean, Michael was just a brilliant director. I mean, he was able to take the talent that he had assembled and give us the freedom to be ourselves, and really was able to pick it up on film.
Hmm.
So and we got to know Michael. Michael started producing the later Bad News Bears movies, so we got to know him then. But one key to what I think was the secret sauce for the Bad News Bears was the writing, and it was written
Hmm.
by Bill Lancaster, who was Burt Lancaster's son.
Hmm.
And Bill wrote the script based on his personal experience in Little League in West Los Angeles. And I think that's what made it so authentic, and why it resonated with so many people. And they said, "Yeah, I was in Little League, and it was very much like that."
I find there's a lot of writing that works like that. Richard Linklater had successfully like that with Dazed and Confused and Everybody Wants Some, movies like that, where it's like this was what it was like, in middle school or in college, and it does come across, especially if you can avoid having studio interference. Because that can definitely hurt movies when you get too many cooks in the kitchen. So I'm under the assumption that Michael Ritchie was left to his own devices and able to make the movie he wanted without the interference.
I think he really was, and he had Stanley Jaffe was the producer, and
Hmm.
had enough faith in him to give him the artistic freedom he needed. And plus, we were kind of, most of the time we were filmed on location. We were filming
Hmm.
out in at Mason Park in Chatsworth, California, which is kind of the
Excuse
northwest
me.
corner of the San Fernando Valley, and at least an hour's drive from the studio. And so we were physically separated from the studio itself.
Excuse me. um, no, I don't have COVID. Have you been tested for COVID?
I did test at one point because I thought I had been exposed to someone, but I've since been vaccinated, so I don't.
Oh, have you? What's it been like being vaccinated?
Well, I had the Moderna version of it, and everybody reacts differently to it. For me, it was just I had a bit of a sore arm for the first shot. The second shot I thought was going to be the same, except the next morning I woke up and I had a headache and a fever of 102 degrees, which didn't last very long, but it definitely demonstrated that my immune system had gotten the message.
Okay. I got tested, but I really didn't have to because I remember I work as a cleaner. I've been working through this pandemic. I do this for fun, but I was working one night and I had a pain in my lower back, and I
Oh,
ended up checking, and
oh
I
my
didn't know what was going on. I don't know whether it was food poisoning or whatever, but I went up to the hospital after and got checked out. But I remember I was talking to the nurse and I was talking about the fact I hated the fact I couldn't travel, and we got talking about the pandemic and the test, and I was like, I asked her about it and she explained what it was, and I was like, can I try it? I didn't have to, but they did the swab in the nose and I was fine. I checked out fine. And the other thing wrong with me, checked out all right, it hasn't come back since, but no, I checked out fine, but it was just a lot of people, they didn't want to do the test because, well, what is it? What is it? Well, it's really not much of anything. Your eyes water a little bit. That's about it.
yeah.
But I'm way down, I think, on the list in terms of the vaccination. I don't know how that's going here, but I'm glad you got it, and that
Yeah, I probably got it earlier than I should have. But the early days of this were really confused, and my wife is in healthcare, so she insisted that I, sign up in this website. I said, I don't think they're going to take me. I'm not in the category. She said no, and I filled it out, and they said they gave me an appointment. I said, all right, well, if they're okay with it, I'll get the shot. So, and I'm glad because I'm working in an office environment where I am exposed to people. So,
it's not bad for being 39 years old.
I wish.
No, I got to bring up to your uncredited movies, Freaky Friday and American Hot Wax, again, two other iconic movies that you're in, and Freaky Friday, I believe, if memory serves me, I think came out the same year as Bad News Bears. Did you do that before or after Bad News Bears?
I think I did it afterward.
Okay.
Yeah. And I worked on that show really just for a couple of days because they were filming the classroom scenes where I was the bratty classmate of Jodie Foster's. And I had the opportunity to dump confetti on Jodie's head. But
Yeah.
it was fun working with Jodie. Jodie and I had the same agent, so it was
Jodie is awesome. Yes. Went on to win a couple of Oscars herself. You worked with some Oscar winners.
I did. Yes, I was rubbing elbows with real celebrity.
Yeah. Well, I think she did Taxi Driver that year as well.
Yeah, I have to go back and watch that again. That's been a long time since I've seen that.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, Jodie hasn't changed a whole lot. She's still stunning.
Yeah,
But
no, she is. Yeah,
so the
and
dumping
very
the
very talented too. She speaks fluent French. I found out when we were filming.
Well, when you dumped the confetti on her head, was that scripted or is that something you just did?
Oh no, that was scripted. Yeah.
So, and of course, American Hot Wax. It's been a while for that one for me. I know Fran Drescher is in that. But how long were you in that movie?
And
Like,
yeah, I only worked a couple of days in that movie too. And,
mm.
and what was really disconcerting was for a couple of days' work, they had to completely restyle my hair into a duckbill. And I thought, oh, really? I'm going to work for 2 days and it's going to take months for this to grow out. But that's the sacrifices you make as an actor.
You mean you don't try the duckbill anymore?
No, it doesn't seem to have caught on back on.
I'm getting that way too. So, hey, but hey, look, Stone Cold Steve Austin seems to be the norm for women seem to like him. So I find not having hair as actually more appealing to the women right now. That's just what my theory is right now.
I discovered that a while ago, yeah.
Yeah,
At
yeah.
some point, it was like, why even try and style this? Let's just shave it off.
And look, Gary Cavanero copied.
He what?
He copied you.
Oh, did he? Oh, I haven't seen him recently. Well, they'll all copy me eventually.
Yes, I think you started it. I think the other bears are following suit.
Well, it could be. I was actually, Jackie Haley and I were the oldest kids on the set. Most of them were considerably younger.
Well, Jackie Earl Haley had no hair when he played Freddy Krueger.
That's true.
Yeah, he made a little bit of a comeback there playing that role. So
Yeah, he did, and he had an Oscar nomination for his role in Little Children, which
hmm
if you haven't seen that, that is an awesome movie on its own.
Do you see him much anymore?
No, I haven't actually seen him since we filmed the movie, but we're in touch. We remember birthdays, and I call
hmm
him every once in a while, see how he's doing.
hmm
And he's
Wow.
he's mostly in Texas these days, so.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, now you have the vaccine shot. Does that mean that do you still have to wear a mask when you go out, or what's the story there?
Yeah, I mean, as you not you don't know who's vaccinated or not now, but
hmm
and we don't know, as a vaccinated person, if I can be an asymptomatic carrier either. So as a courtesy
Okay.
to other people, I still wear the mask
hmm
just so they don't freak out, and just in case I could be a asymptomatic carrier.
But you feel no nervousness just going out or anything, huh?
Well, I was never nervous
Okay.
about going out. I was certainly nervous about any crowds, especially
hmm
indoors. Um, but I've always been that way. If I'm going to go out and I think I'm going to be in a situation where I can't maintain social distancing, then I'll wear a mask. But if I'm just
hmm
taking the dog for a walk around the neighborhood, it's easy enough. You can kind of steer clear of people, and you don't have to wear a mask. But yeah, no, certainly when I'm at my office, walking through the halls, I'll wear a mask,
hmm
and that's part of the protocol in the office.
Okay. Well, what else? What's up in the future for you? What's happening with you nowadays?
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm still very involved in public service. I'm on my
hmm
local city council here. I am also on the board for the Southern California Association of Governments, which interests me because I've always been a big picture person, and we do all of the transportation and land use planning for 191 cities and 6 counties. We're the
hmm
largest metropolitan planning organization in the country. I'm also very involved with the League of California Cities, and I represent 25 cities and 3 counties for the league as well. I'm on the Air Pollution Control Board, and I'm very involved with environmental issues.
hmm
Um, and I'm on the board of 4 nonprofit organizations as well. So it's a very busy life.
Okay, that was going to lead to my next question. Any charities that you're involved in that you want to plug on here?
Well, it's mostly local stuff,
hmm
so I'm president of the Moore Park Education Foundation, for
hmm
example, and our job is really raising money for the things that the school district can't afford to fund, particularly the arts. And I'm on the Moore Park College Foundation. I'm on the foundation board for Adventist Health Simi Valley, which is our local hospital here. And I'm also on the board of Cause, which is a social justice organization in Ventura.
Well, here's a question. What made you go from acting to where you are now? Because obviously you don't seem to be in the acting anymore. So what made you go from that to where you
Depends
are
on who
now?
you ask.
Oh,
um, so the acting I did from the time I was about 8 years old when I first started doing commercials,
Mm-hmm.
And I was at the last thing I did, I think I was 17 years old, not long after we finished the Bears movies.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I learned as a child actor was that it's not all as glamorous as it might seem to people. It's a
Yeah.
lot of, you spend most of your time going to interviews and being disappointed. And so you have to sell yourself. And as you become 16, 17 years old, the child labor laws still apply to you. You're not allowed to work more than 4 hours a day. So 18-year-olds start picking up the parts that you could have played because they don't have the same rules that apply to them. So it started, to be a little bit difficult. And I wasn't really sure that that's what I wanted to rely on for a living, because
Mm-hmm.
it's very, very sporadic living. That 99% of the Screen Actors Guild is unemployed on any given day. So I took some of the money that I earned and started taking flying lessons. I was interested in aviation. And
Okay.
in a year, I became a flight instructor. And I thought, well, this is fun. I might like to do this. Maybe I'll be an airline pilot.
Oh, wow.
And that didn't turn out to be a practical ambition because they weren't hiring at the time, for one thing. And
Okay.
people they were military pilots. So I started working on the ground for airlines at LA Airport, and eventually took a salary position with Flying Tiger Airlines, which at the time was the world's largest air cargo airline. So
Okay.
my first assignment when I went there, they gave me 3 747s and 2 DC-8s that were in a passenger configuration, and those were my planes to manage. Make sure that they got maintained, that they were scheduled, that they got crewed, and that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that, and I eventually developed a automated fleet management system for the whole airline, and worked there until shortly before they were bought by Federal Express. But I was recruited to work at Rocketdyne, which is the maker of the space shuttle main engines. So
Okay.
I had the opportunity to go work on the space shuttle and space station programs for a while, and that was a lot of fun. In fact, I was there for 18 years. They paid for my graduate education. I went back to UCLA and got my MBA degree. And they eventually had me do all of the long range planning for the division. And I became the industry expert on orbital launch prediction. So basically, my job was to know everything that launched into orbit and do a 10-year forecast for what I thought was going to launch, what launch vehicles it was going on, and what rocket engines were going to be needed for that. And that was a
Oh,
lot of fun. But along the way, I started a family. My kids started going to school, and I wanted to have a hand in what was happening with our local public schools.
mm-hmm.
And I joined a couple of local committees and eventually ran for school board, and eventually became president of the California School Boards Association. So I had a whole other parallel career going in politics, and that I eventually ran for the city council where I am now. And so it became more convenient for me to do consulting, so I had more control over my time. So that's what I've been doing for about the past 10, 11 years, is helping small businesses grow.
Wow. I never knew that you were involved as a flight attendant. I thought that's impressive.
Flight instructor. Yeah.
A flight instructor. Wow. Okay. So I like this where you go with one thing, and if it doesn't quite pan out or meet your expectations, you gravitate to something else and into something else. I like that. And you've had many avenues. Wow. That's impressive. I didn't know about a lot of these stuff. Even from our last interview, I don't think that was even brought up. So what do your kids think of the Bad News Bears?
Well, for them, it was kind of whenever it was brought up, it would be an eye roll moment for them. It's like everybody always brings that up with dad. And now that they're, grown up and in their 30s, they think it's kind of a novelty. So they make fun of me for it. And they one birthday, they even all made up, Rudy Stein t-shirts and wore them.
What about Freaky Friday and American Hot Wax? Have they seen those?
I don't know that they've actually seen those. I mean, I had a very small role in each of
Hmm.
those, and so you'd have to watch carefully to see where I even was in it. But Yeah, I don't know. They've watched any of my movies in a long time. Although I think my daughter watched when we had the 40th anniversary of the Bears. I
Hmm.
got five of the original castmates together, and we actually showed the movie on the big screen in our local theater here. And we had a lot of people pay to be a part of that because we
That's
were raising
awesome.
money for a charity, and that was actually really cool. I had never seen it on a big screen since the 70s.
Oh,
And so
wow.
and it was a totally different experience than watching it even in a home theater. It's just not the same to be there with a live audience and watched all in the big screen the way it was meant to be seen.
So what the experience you had some of the bears together for that, that must be something because not everything transcends through years and years, you know. You get movies, some of them lose their luster and some of them still maintain it, you know. Like Airplane is still as funny today as it was when it first came out, you know. Well, Bad News Bears still holds that, and I could think of a lot of sports movies. I won't name any that it's just basically by the numbers, very formula, didn't work for me. What always stood out for me with Bad News Bears is that it doesn't quite do what you expect, and to me, that takes a lot of intelligence to write that and make it believable.
I agree, and that's what when I watch a movie and think that was a really good movie, it's because it was unpredictable. I
Mhm.
don't like movies where it's a formula and you know how it's going to end when it starts, and there's no element of surprise there. So, and by the
Exactly.
way, I'm still a member of the Screen Actors Guild even after all these years. So
Oh,
every year
wow.
I have an opportunity to vote in the SAG Awards,
Mhm.
which so I've been screening all the movies that are out now, and there's uh, it's been an interesting year for movies. It seems like COVID has cast a gray shadow on a lot of things. There's not very up movies this year, but there are some very good movies nonetheless.
Well, our theater opened back up last July, and I immediately started going. And like I said, they have it electronically, so you can pick your seats, and some of them you weren't allowed to sit in. And I have a mask on when I go, but I could take it off if I'm eating, you know. And
Mhm.
people have asked me, said, "What's it like? You know, is it safe?" I'm like, "Yeah, I feel completely okay." In fact, I noticed today one of my guests was part of a convention. So there's conventions going on somewhere, and I guess they feel safe enough. So I don't
Yeah, it
know.
seems risky to me. I wouldn't want to go to a large crowded event even now.
Well, the one I was talking to two people. One I saw on Facebook, and one I it was one of my guests said that it was a smaller one, and it went smoothly. I don't know how they did it, but apparently it went smoothly. Um, I certainly don't want to put myself at risk, but I'll tell you, I'm looking forward to getting back in the scene. My mom has said to me, she says, "This is the new normal." I'm like, "It can't be the new normal," because there were people that couldn't travel to see their families at Christmas time. Yeah, that new normal is not going to be accepted. So yeah, we got to come ahead of this, and I I feel that we are slowly, but I think we are. You know,
Yeah, I
slowly.
still think that, until we reach herd immunity, there's still a chance that we might see another surge, and that's what people are worried about. So we're not out of the woods yet, but at
Okay.
least with the vaccinations happening at the pace they are now, I think that we'll get ahead of it here by the end of the year.
Yeah. You got a web page or anything like that that you want to plug on here that where people can go to find you?
Oh goodness. No, I have a number of web pages that I manage for local businesses and that kind of thing, but I never really put one together for just me other than campaign websites, and I'm
Hmm.
not running for anything right now. So, if anybody, the town I live in is Moore Park, California.
Hmm.
And if you ever stop here, I put together a website called Moore Park Eats, which highlights all of the restaurants in town.
Hmm.
And we're starting to become a bit of a foodie town here. And so I'm hoping that people will discover us.
Yes. Well, we're hoping that things open up and that things can get back to normal, and that
Whatever that was.
yeah. Well, I remember it, and like I said, I'm ready when this thing goes away. And well, eventually, knock on wood. You know what? It was wonderful having you come on here today and talk to me and relive. I can't believe 45 years.
Oh yeah, my goodness.
45 years. Bad News Bears. And again, one of the greatest sports movies ever, easily. And I know you're proud to be part of that, and everybody should be proud to be part of that. That was in it. I'm sure Walter Matthau considered that a highlight in his career as well.
He did, and I'm still in touch with his son Charlie, who actually had a cameo role in the movie. So yeah, Walter lives on through his son, and certainly in our memories.
Is the son into acting?
No, I think he's doing more work behind the camera now, but yeah, I don't think he really was ever into acting. It's just he was hanging around so much. Apparently, Michael Ritchie's gave him a bit part.
Does he have his dad's sense of humor?
I really didn't get to know him well enough to say, but we are still in touch, and he's a good guy.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, David, do you have anything else you want to say or plug on here before we close off?
No, no, I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. Let's do this every once in a while. It's always fun,
Yep.
and good to see you. I'm glad you're well.
Well, I see your post on Facebook. I don't always comment, but I do definitely. I don't get into the political jargons. I know people get in trouble on Facebook when they start doing that. I just like to put my anniversary. I just put your last interview up for its 4-year anniversary when that came
Uh,
up. And I think I tagged you in that. And I do that. I see people all the time. They're like, "I'm in Facebook jail." What'd you say?
yeah, you have
I'm
to be careful what you say, and I'm also on Twitter. And if anyone wants to follow me there, because I do post all sorts of things, including some things about the Bad News Bears.
hmm
And, on Twitter, I'm David P. as in Pollock, 805. David P.
Okay.
805 on Twitter.
Okay. Well, before I let you go, I would love for you to do a plug for my show here.
Absolutely. What do
Yeah.
you want me to say?
Just state your name and that you played Rudy Stein in the Bad News Bears. We're celebrating the 45th anniversary. And say you're listening to Greg Gilbert, Python's Paradise out in New Brunswick, Canada. You got all that?
I think so.
Well, give her a shot. Go
All
for it.
right. Hello, everybody. I'm David Pollock. You know me best as Rudy Stein from the Bad News Bears, which was 45 years ago. It's hard to believe. And I'm here on Python's Paradise with Greg Gilbert, who was kind enough to ask me on the show. And I hope you enjoy it.
Absolutely. It was a blessing and an honor to have you back with us, and keep yourself safe and keep being an awesome leader there in California. That the community appreciates it.
Well, thank you, Gilbert. I certainly hope so. And thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. We'll be in touch.
All right. Take
All
care.
right. You take care.